How do we train our youth ministry volunteers? How frequently should we be offering trainings for our youth ministry volunteers? What are some key topics that our youth ministry and our youth ministry volunteers need to be exploring? And then finally, what are some platforms that you can utilize, that you can send them to so that they can sharpen their skills as volunteers? And finally, make sure that you hang around all the way to the end of the video, because I have an idea that I think will not only help your volunteers level up, but also is going to not add another meeting to your plate. Well, hey everyone, welcome to the Hybrid Ministry Show. My name is Nick Clason. I've been a youth pastor for 13 something years, and because of that, you got to think about it. Youth ministry has a lot of things that feel a little bit unnatural. Like, let's just say, for example, I was a volunteer in your youth ministry, and let's say I walked in for the very first time and you told me, hey, listen, just go hang out and love on teenagers. Like, I would probably, as a 13-year youth ministry veteran, I would probably be okay in figuring out how to do that. Now, if a brand new dad or mom or college student walks in and you give them those exact same instructions, they're probably not going to know what to do. For one of the reasons simply being because they are told all throughout society and culture not to do that. And so in a lot of ways, youth ministry is kind of creepy, right? And so we have to help give them the comfort and safety to do some of those things, but B, help teach them and level them up on how they can do that safely and appropriately, and that it is good youth ministry for them to go hang out with teenagers and not just be a chaperone. But I say that to say because you need to help sharpen their skills. You have to help level them up. Some of the things that you and I do as youth pastors, youth leaders, we already do these things naturally, but we need to level up. We need to train our volunteers. And if one of the roles that we're trying to do is have them hang out with students, well then, hey, well listen, we should probably give them opportunities to do that. That's why I created this completely free ebook. If you look through it, it's 40 ideas. It's a month's worth of posting content, but it's not just a bunch of still and static graphics. What it actually is it's teaching you and training you not only how to pre-record your messages to post them on YouTube so that you are showing up in a digital and a hybrid space on a platform where students are spending 95% of students are spending some of their time, but also then it will let you, your students, and your leaders do things and work together on camera, different challenges, different games and things like that. And so that's going to be a great opportunity for your students and your leaders to start to rub shoulders, and you can kill kind of two birds with one stone by crushing it for social media. How frequently should we, as youth pastors and youth ministry leaders, how frequently should we be hosting trainings? Well, let's talk about that in the next video. So how frequently should we be hosting trainings? There are several schools of thought, and there are a couple different ways to think about it. First of all, every single time you meet, you may be having some sort of huddle. And I would recommend some sort of thing around that, some sort of, strategy around meeting, getting everyone on the same page, giving everyone the service run sheet so that they have what they need, so that they're not in a lurch for that night. However, that can get a little bit cumbersome, and especially if it's like on a Wednesday night, you may be running into volunteers and they're getting off of work schedule. And so one thing that I have done in the past is, instead of doing a weekly huddle, I've done more of like a monthly gathering, monthly huddle. And then that monthly gathering would not only operate as a weekly huddle to get everyone on the same page and talk to them about what we're teaching and sharing in our small group, but then it would also give me a moment to do some team building as well as some training. And so that would sort of be a strategy to do that. But let me just say that one year I was doing a monthly huddle. I shifted from a weekly huddle to a monthly huddle. And in my monthly huddle, one thing that felt like all I can explain is the feeling was myself and many of my volunteers, every single time when it was time for another huddle, they'd be like, again? Right? It felt like it was all the time. It felt like it was constantly something that we were turning around and doing, like, oh, we got another one of those again? Oh yeah, that's right. It's been a month, right? And so there may be a rhythm, and you just got to figure this out, what works for you. because a monthly huddle is often probably something you have to do in an off-peak time. So it's Sunday after church, or it's Wednesday late after one of your Wednesday nights, or something like that. But it's not going to be tied to and woven in to your already existing youth ministry schedule. And so you got to figure out, when can you get all of your volunteers to commit to another moment on their calendar and in their week. And then another idea within that is, how frequently are you going to be communicating? So while you do have meetings, there are going to be not infrequent, but different types of communication. So things like group text messages and or emails. How frequently, how often are you going to be also sending those things out? I recommend weekly. So a weekly sort of communication email, and then another form of gathering, whether that be an annual meeting, which I haven't said yet, but that's an idea, an annual meeting, a one-time meeting, whether it's twice a year you get together for a big sort of thing, whether it's a monthly sort of leader gathering, or some sort of weekly huddle. Now, in every single one of those scenarios, your training is going to have to look a little bit different. If you do annually, you probably can do a big seminar type style thing. You can probably also do that if you meet twice a year. If you do monthly, you might need to make it a little more bite-sized, not so long, not so many hours of a commitment. And if you meet weekly, you got to be more in like the tips and tactics zone. And all those to be said, you can also share some tips and tactics to level up youth ministry training in your weekly communications via text, via email. Now you might be thinking like, okay, I see the need for this, and I realize I need to figure out where I'm going to stick it on my calendar, but what in the world should I be talking about? Great, let's talk through that in the next section. All right, some good topics, and these are just suggestions and examples, and if something pops up in some particular area or arena in your student ministry, then address it by all means, right? But if you are like, I know I want to meet, I know I need to help level my leaders up, but I don't even know where to start, then there's going to be a list right here on the screen. If you are listening, you can head to the show notes, hybridministry.xyz/085. Also, if you do end up over on YouTube, be sure to give us a subscribe and a like, because these topics, we don't want only you to have them. We want all the youth pastors in America to know them, to have them, and to be able to turn to them in a time of need. But some topics that I have done, or I have seen, or I just think could be useful, I have 10 right here. Screenshot them. This could, if you do a monthly gathering, this could essentially fill out your monthly training calendar for the year, right? One per month. So the first one is, how do you distinguish between a leader versus being a friend of the students? You could also then chat through in another month, managing a distracted group. We've all been there. We've all led a group that's distracted, especially the 6th grade boys group. How do you get them on task, and what is a win for them? How do you take kids seriously? A lot of times we want to come in, we want to tell them what to do, but how do we take their needs, their concerns, their thoughts, their ideas, their things that they say? How do we take them seriously so that we can add and bring value to who they are as people? How do you pray with your small group? What are some practical ideas beyond just praying to close? But how can you be praying as a small group and be a praying small group together? Maybe do a little training on Gen Z and Gen Alpha. I actually have a video linked right here at the top of the screen about Gen Alpha, exploring who they are and what we need to know. So maybe you could go watch that, and that could be the springboard for some of your content. What are some cultural trends, right, these days that are going on? Just be thinking like, what's culturally relevant right now, and how can we take those trends and how can we chat through some of them? Especially if you have a team of adults, they're not living in teen culture anymore. So help expose them to some of those things that maybe even you need to do a little bit of study, a little bit of research on, but help expose them to some of those things. What about the power of listening? You know that it's not good for a small group leader to be in there and to just be yammering on the whole time. So help challenge them, help challenge your small group leaders to listen first and talk. Second, what about the power of showing up? Helping, as we talked about in the last video in this Youth Ministry Masterclass 2024 playlist, as we talked about scaling up the care for leaders, shepherding. You can spread out some of those responsibilities. If a small group leader shows up to a kid's soccer game, not only does that get you off the hook, and I'm not saying that you should be trying to get off the hook of these things, but if you have 100 kids to get to soccer games for, that's going to be tricky for you to get to 100 different soccer games. But your youth ministry volunteers can also show up to the kids in their small group. Getting teens to serve, helping equip small group leaders to be recruiters, and helping teenagers step into their God-given callings and abilities. And finally, how do you partner with parents? Give small group leaders tangible tips and tricks and tools to be able to reach out to parents. Very simply, something like, do they have all the email lists? And if they don't, do they have access to get all the email lists? Have you allowed them to be a member of your church management software to at least be able to get in and access the group information? So those are just some topic ideas. It's not holistic, it's not exhaustive, but they're just 10 ideas to help you begin to think about training. Now you might be thinking, do I do that? Do I do, one of those topics in a monthly gathering? Do I cram some of them together in an annual gathering? Do I weave some of them in and out of my communication? The answer to that is it's up to you. You got to figure out what's going to work best for you. But I do have in the next section several platforms that you can explore and look at and maybe even try to train and level up some of your youth ministry volunteers. So, hey, let's go check that out. So from a once a year, from an annual sort of perspective, there is no better option, honestly, than the DYM, which is an abbreviation for the National Day of Volunteer Youth Ministry Training, put on and hosted by my friends over at Download Youth Ministry, Josh Griffin, Doug Fields, and their team. There is a link down in the description, or head over to the show notes for trainmyvolunteers.com, which will give you info and insight into how to sign up for one of these things. The fact is the pricing is very, very cheap. For training your entire team, it's only $250. If you want to be a host church, or have other churches come to your church as a host church, it's $400. But you get to bring as many people, as many volunteers to that training as possible. Plus, it's all video based, and so you get that video for the entire year. So even if you don't play the full video, you can kind of clip it up and use it throughout the year. Another platform idea number 2, is honestly this YouTube channel, right? Like, I am focusing on helping meld between the digital and the physical and bringing those things together. But I also have a lot of just generalized youth ministry content. So you could check out my youth ministry channel. Idea number 3, you can check out the Practical Youth Ministry Tips podcast. My friend Eric with the K Williams, he is dropping gold all day long over on his channel as well. So both of our channels are completely free. Both of us are trying to just get the message and the word out there, and so we want people to at least be aware of it. But right now we're doing it primarily for free, right? We're not charging you $400 like National Day training is. Another couple of ideas is the DYM Leader Training Library. So if you're a member of DYM, I can't remember the tiers, who gets access to this, but I know if you're at the highest couple of tiers, you get access to a DYM Leader Training Library. So they're videos that you can log into a portal, and you can watch video trainings from people like Doug Fields, Josh Griffin, and some of their friends over there. And they have several of the topics, even several of the topics that I was suggesting earlier, are available on that podcast site. Another thing that I have submitted content for and I've used is the My YouthMin portal by YM360. I think it's aimed a little bit more at the primary and central youth worker, but it's a great platform to check out if it's something that is behind a paywall, but it's got some top flight people talking about things, people in the trenches, and it's 19 pieces of new content drop onto that platform every single month. And so that's one of the keys about it, is that it is dynamic and it is moving. It's not just going to be like a leader training library of static videos that haven't been updated in several years. And so the MYM podcast, link down below in the description or the show notes. All these are links down in the description. And finally, the idea that I think, because things are changing, and I don't want another meeting on my calendar, and you probably don't want another meeting on your calendar, an idea for training, either to supplement or to replace some of your in-person meetings, is what about creating a podcast on the go, right? Like you can offer training to your leaders as they're going, as they're heading to work, as they're running groceries, as they're picking up kids from school and soccer practice. If you create a podcast feed, whether it be a public or a private feed, and you just do 5 to 10 minute trainings, you can pick up a pretty easy and cheap microphone, very similar to this. I'll drop some links down below in the show notes for you to check out. If you want to do video based, you can use your cell phone and you can get up and going. And listen, if you start pre-filming your messages like I recommend in my full year strategy anyway, you should have a camera, whether it be a real camera or you're just using your phone and you're using my under $100 starter kit to get going. You can use that as a way to get some of that training up and going. And then you can just start posting it to places. And so if you do audio, you do a podcast feed. If you do video, you do YouTube. But like I said, what I'm trying to think about is I'm trying to ride some of the future waves and some of the future trends, because that's actually what I'm going to be talking about in the very next video, which is going to be linked right here on the screen. Kerry Newhoff and his 2024 trends. It is an amazing article. He's been doing an amazing job, and I know we're several months in now to 2024, but I wanted to do a react video, and so check that video out, linked right here on the screen, because we, in this podcast, are trying to make digital discipleship easy and possible and accessible. And so, as always, stay hybrid.